Welcome students. This is Sonali Naik, Assistant Professor in Economics from Government College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Sanklin, Goa. The title of the unit for the today's session will be Money in a Modern Economy. Module name for the today's session will be Demand for Money. Outline for the today's session: the concept of money, functions of money, concept of demand for money, and which are those factors that's affecting a demand for money. Learning outcomes: after completion of this module, the students will be able to understand the meaning of money. They can also explain the functions of money. They can also analyze the concept of demand for money and which are those factors that's affecting a demand for money. So before starting with this demand for money, let's look at some of the definitions of money. In economics, the money is defined as a store of value which is generally accepted as a medium of exchange. The money generally used for buying the goods which is offered for a sale. The money can also define as to the medium of exchange and also define as the payment. The money in narrowly, which also includes the coins, paper currency and demand deposits of commercial bank. The broader definition of money is also includes the money substitutes because they do have a direct bearing on spending. Which are the functions of money? Here we are having two types of functions, the primary functions and the secondary functions. Under these primary functions, the first they are having the medium of exchange. Money can also serve as a medium of exchange or medium of payments. Money also helps in buying and selling of the goods and services as it's the commonly accepted the measure of value. The money has solved the problem of double coincidence of wants and therefore the exchange has become simple and unlimited. The second functions of money is basically the unit of value or the measurement of value. It is a unit of account in terms of which the value of all the goods and services is measured and expressed. It means the value of each goods and services is measured in the monetary terms, that is called as to the price. It helps to compare the values of different commodities and also to maintain the record. The secondary functions of money is basically the standard deferred payment. Deferred payments are the payments that's actually made at the future date. The money has a standard deferred payments has facilitated the lendings and borrowings in terms of money and also repaid in terms of money. Thus, by expressing a loans in terms of money, we are using the money as a standard of deferred payment. The secondary functions of money is basically the store of value. In the barter system, that is very difficult in measuring the store of value. But storing of wealth has become so very easy with the help of these introductions of money. The store of wealth is a source of future investment, so it is also called as the asset functions of money. The thirdly secondary functions of money is basically the transfer of value. The money also served as a convenient mode of transfer of value. The goods are purchased from far off place for both consumption as well as for the investment. Only the things we need to have is purchasing power at the place where the goods are purchased. Now let's look at why the peoples are demanding the money. So demand for money is actually means the total amount of money that the population of an economy wants to hold, which also known as to the desire of the peoples to hold the cash balances in hand. Many of the economics has actually given their views regarding this demand for money. So one of the economics, that is the Keynes, defines the money as the people's total requirement of cash or the money balances as a store of value at a particular point of time. So now questions rise here, why the people prefer the liquidity or the cash balances, or why the people tries to hold the money in hand. So some of the peoples is holding the stock of money all the times to carry out their day-to-day transaction, and some of the businessmen tries to hold the cash balances in hand for the day-to-day business activity. And for example, like consumers, they also require the cash balances in order to make their day-to-day purchases of goods and services for consumption. Now, people generally keep some cash reserves with themselves for unforeseen contingencies such as illness, accidents, unemployment, or any other calamity. Uncertainty of the future rate of interest, that the demand for money for the speculative motive arises. So now let's look at some of the difference between the demand for money and demand for bonds. In this demand for money, the people strives to hold the cash balances in hand for several reasons. For unforeseen contingencies, for day-to-day transaction, for purchasing of the goods and services, for various other reasons. But demand for bonds is basically depends upon the interest rate. If in the economy is having a higher interest rate, they will strive to hold the bonds rather than holding the cash in hand. If the interest rate are low, they try to hold the more of cash balances in hand rather than bonds. So holding the money balances will depends upon the smoothness, which the time you get the paid and the time you use the money to make payments. If holding of bonds and other assets will get the higher interest payment, then people tries to invest the money in holding bonds and other assets rather than holding the cash balances in hand. Interest rate that describes the cost of holding the money balances. So based upon the interest rate, the people tries to make the decisions about the holding the cash balances in hand or holding the bonds. Interest rate tells us the amount of interest income that you have sacrificed by holding the money balances instead of lending out that money and holding in assets like a bond. Now let's look at some of the factors that's affecting a demand for money. The first factors that's affecting a demand for money is basically the interest rate. So if the interest rate is high in the economies, people tries to hold them more of bonds rather than holding a cash in hand. So if the interest rate goes up, then return will increase. So the people will hold the lower level of money balances in hand. So people here try to do the investment in order to hold the bond because they will get to the higher return in future. If the interest rate are false, then the returns will not so great for the people. So here, the people will hold the higher level of money balances instead of investing the money in holding a bonds. The second factors that's affecting a demand for money is basically aggregate demand. So aggregate demand and holding the cash balances is actually has a positive relation with each other. If the volume of income and the output produced in the goods market increases, then clearly there will be larger volume of transactions and exchange will take place in the economy. So here, the people will need to hold the larger the volume of money in order to meet all the transactions and in order to make the payments. The price level is another factors which affects the demand for money. Economy is in the inflation, which actually means the price of all the goods and services has an increase in the economy. So that means all the goods has become more of expensive in the economy. So that's the reasons the demand for money rises here. So the higher the price level, the money is required to given a quantity of goods and services. So level of money holding tends to rise at the same rate as prices. So consumer spending will be another factors which affects the demand for money. So if the demand for goods goes up, the higher the consumer spending during the period of festivals. At the time of festivals, the people starts to demand the more of goods in the economy. So if they demanding the more of goods in the economy, then consumer spending will going to increase. So here, the people starts to hold the more of money for transaction. Lastly, the expectation will be another factors that are affecting a demand for money. So people always do have expectations regarding the interest rate, whether the interest rate will increase in future or whether the interest rate will decrease in future. So it is presumed that people can hold their wealth either in the form of bonds or either in the form of cash balances. The decisions regarding the holding of bonds or the cash balances that actually depends upon the rate of interest or the capital value of assets in future. So now let's take an example. So wealth holders would like to invest the cash in bonds when the interest rate is high and bond prices are low. Actually, here the wealth holders making expectations that in future the interest rate will decline and the bond prices will decline. So let's take an example. So wealth holder will like to invest the cash in bonds when interest rate is high and bond prices are low. The wealth holders has an expectation that in future the interest rate will decline and bond prices will increase. So wealth holder will also maintain a stock of cash when the interest rate are low and bond prices are high. Actually, the wealth holders has an expectation that in future the interest rate will increase and the bond prices will decline. These are my references. Thank you, students.